Hey, this is Shilpa, and today we're going to go over how to search and pick the best rubrics for your repertorization. Now, if you're really struggling to find good rubrics for your patient's symptoms from your repertory programs, and either you have no results for your patient's symptoms or there are too many results that overwhelm you and you don't know which one to pick, this is for you. Now, this is something we all have been struggling with since repertory programs were created for the longest time. But I did not realize why and how to overcome that until I started creating HomeoQuest. Now, I had no idea how technology worked and how we can hack that. So let me tell you, I'm nowhere an expert, but I am always learning. But these are the 5 technical shortcuts that I have found are the best way to land on the best rubric for your patient's symptoms if they are present in your programs or in your database. I've divided all these into 2 big categories. One is there are not enough rubrics or there are no rubrics that represent your patient's symptoms. 2, if there are too many rubrics and you are confused which one to pick, right? Let's go to the first category where there are not enough rubrics. So shortcut 1 is use global search. Go for a global repertory search and use the best of our database. Let me give you an example. So I had a question from one of my students. She was looking for a rubric for people who need to control life of others. Now, if you're used to choosing just one repertory, like the complete repertory, which is a great repertory, it's the biggest repertory that we have. And if you put in, into the mind section, you go and you look at the search box and you put control others and you say search. So there's only one result, dictatorial control others wants to. That's the rubric, all right? And it has only 4 remedies. When you use such very tiny rubrics, you're going to spoil your repertorization, the final results, because we need large, big, general rubrics to make your repertorization worthwhile. That is the only way it works, right? So what do you do in such cases? How do you look for other rubrics that have this particular symptom? The trick is to go global, which means use every possible repertory and book in your database. And if you put here control, we have lots of different rubrics for control. If you put control others, you can see there are 3 more rubrics here. One is Jeremy's Q repertory, which has 190 remedies. It is a broad mental quality control. It represents theme of the case as control. It represents excessive controls of self, of others, of environment, as well as being controlled by others. So they have a problem around controlling as an issue, controlling themselves or controlling others, right? So this is a wonderful rubric. There is another rubric from Dr. Ghanshyam Kalatia's mammals repertory, controlling others' desire for, which has 10 remedies. And then obviously we have the complete rubric, which has 4. So together you can use this as a broad spectrum rubric. You either use one or you can use the others depending on what you need. So that is what we are looking for here. Shortcut 2, use part words and open-ended keywords. Let me give you an example. So say somebody has fear of being buried alive. Now, when you have a symptom like that, say you're using repertory search in this case, and you put fear of being buried alive, and you see there is only one rubric, fear buried alive, with 7 remedies in it. Again, this is a very small rubric, and you cannot actually use it in repertorization. So when you have such a situation, don't use the entire rubric or the entire symptom of the patient. Use keywords, something like just say buried, and see what comes up. Now, if you look at, yes, there are some unrelated rubrics, but if you go down and check for some other mind rubrics, look at those. You have You have delusions, alive one side, buried on the other. You have dreams of being buried alive, 12 remedies. Again, a wonderful complement to fear. Then you have dreams of being buried alive, sleeping on the back wall, dreams of being buried alive, explosives with, dreams of being buried alive, ruins amongst. So you see so many different variations and so many different aspects coming up apart from just being a fear of being buried alive. So don't restrict yourself. Look at dreams, look at delusions, look at fears, look at sensations, whatever is coming up around that theme of the keyword of being buried. And that actually gives you the entire spectrum of that particular symptom in that patient's. So don't put the exact patient words in your repertory search. Shortcut 3, use crossing rubric function. So what is crossing rubrics and when do you do that? You generally cross when you cannot find a good peculiar rubric with all its components. Let's take an example. So say you're looking for a rubric, inflammation of the bladder from beer. Yeah. So if you take that, inflammation, bladder from beer aggravates, you have only one rubric that comes up from the complete. No other repertory has it. And you have only one remedy, nux vomica. Now, such a rubric is not useful for repertorization. So what do you do? In this case, what we do is break it into components and cross them. Okay? So what we do is we break it into inflammation of bladder and we break it into beer aggravates. This is the way Bonninghausen's analysis works, right? So we use inflammation bladder. And if you check, it's a huge rubric, 263 remedies. So you use that. I've repertorized it here. And then you do beer aggravates. Now, lots of rubrics there, but I'll choose the biggest one from the complete, which is food and drinks, beer aggravates. And then what you do is you cross them, which means, let me just click the cross, and then we put this big rubric, inflammation, bladder, beer aggravates. And now look at that, you have 51 remedies. How wonderful is that? And nux vomica is one of them, but there are so many others. And what crossing does is it takes the common remedies from both these rubrics, but the other remedies are also considered. They are taken, the common remedies are taken just once, and the others are all added in and combined. So you expand your rubric, you expand the remedies, you make it more inclusive, and that is the key, that is the secret. Category 2, where there are too many similar rubrics. So what do we do then? So the first shortcut in this category is combine. Combine those similar rubrics. Let me show you an example. So say we have that previous rubric, which was, being buried alive. Okay. And you saw there were so many small, tiny rubrics that came up for that particular rubric. Because if you just take fear of being buried alive, you had just 7 remedies in it, if your patient had fear. But if you have so many different rubrics with, tiny number of remedies, then the best way is to actually combine them. Okay? So what I do here is I'm taking this. There's this interesting one, buried under snow. I like it. I take this. Dreams of being buried alive, then what else we have? Sleep, dreams of being buried alive from Kent, dreams of being buried alive from Complete. And then I like these tiny ones, dreams of buried alive from Nares while sleeping on back, dreams of buried alive explosives with, and ruins amongst. Now what happens is you have about 7-8 tiny rubrics, select them all, and then say combine, and then you make into a big rubric, buried alive, and then you see suddenly you have 25 remedies, which is good. From 7, you've come to 25. And that is the way you play the game. Shortcut 2. What if there are too many such small rubrics, not just 5, 10, but 10, 20, 30, 40. What do you do then? Do you go and keep combining all of them one after the other? In that case, we use Quest. Let me show you how. What if you have symptoms that have too many rubrics, too many similar rubrics coming up? So say something like fear of death, okay? Now you see there are 285 results, so many rubrics. And obviously it is tempting to take something like this big rubric from Complete, which is 298 remedies, which is great. However, we want to ensure that we are including every possible rubric and remedy that we could have missed out beyond this, all right? So in that case, I also do a parallel repertorization from the Mathematics, okay? So if I look into the Mathematics, which is, that same rubric, we're now going to search from Quest, and we say fear of death. Now, look at that. We have 334 remedies. So Complete had 298, and we are now 334. So there were about 50 remedies more that we hadn't had in that rubric. And that is what Quest does, because it has gone and taken together every possible symptom from not just the repertories, but also the Mathematics, which has fear of death, which was not there in that one single rubric. And I'll tell you what was not there. For example, something like death, agony, fear of. This is a beautiful rubric from Bonninghausen. This is something you do not find in the Complete repertory. It has 59 remedies, and this is about the suffering of death, which is a useful rubric. Then we have another rubric, fear of death with weeping, from the diabetes repertory. Fear of death during diabetes. Again, this is from Dr. Ashok Borkar's diabetes repertory, a clinically tested rubric. You do not find it in Complete. Another rubric from there, red cheeks with fear of death during pregnancy. Again, such an interesting rubric, pregnancy specific, but you do not have it in Complete, that remedy or that rubric. So these are just 3 examples, and then there are tons of examples from Mathematics. So do not underestimate combining. Do not underestimate the results you could get beyond the big repertories, and do not underestimate what repertorization from the Mathematics can do for you. Use every possible tool, use technology to your advantage, and get the best out of our database. So hope that helps. If you find this video helpful, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friend that you believe might be helped in their repertorization. If you want to learn more, such tips and want to look at such videos from me, go ahead, subscribe and comment down below. Tell me about your shortcuts that work for you, something that I don't know about or you think many people don't know about. Let's create a kind of a collaborative environment in the comment section. All right, then go and give your patients the best of your homeopathy this week, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.